Hello, my name is Scott Bradley, and this is the Gersnet Podcast. And as always, this podcast is sponsored by Forrest Precision Engineering. And I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Ross Bennett. Ross, how are we tonight, mate?
Very well, thank you. Very well indeed. A bit warm, if I'm honest, but otherwise very good. How are you?
No, but of course, mate, the weather's been absolutely fantastic in Scotland today, which makes a change. But of course, typical Scottish weather. Obviously, the good weather starts to come in towards the end of the summer. But how's your day been overall?
Okay. It's been okay. It's been a good weekend, I suppose, all things considered, getting a positive result. I was hopeful that Livingston would do the business over Hibs today, seeing that didn't quite happen. So I guess a tough draw for us in the quarterfinals. Everything feels like a tough draw for Rangers at the minute. But it's been a pleasant weekend.
But of course, yeah, well, obviously we'll touch on it. The Rangers game yesterday, Rangers won 4-2. But I'm not going to lie, Ross, see going into that game, I was actually worried.
Yeah,
Honestly, I was
I know.
genuinely worried. Well, I was getting a haircut during the week, right? And I was saying to my barber, you know what? See any game that Rangers go into, especially in Scotland, I fear. Like, and I said to him as well, where it's such a weird dynamic where see teams that come to Ibrox in Scotland, they don't fear Rangers, but see teams from Europe when they come to Ibrox, they fear Rangers. It's just
Yeah,
so bizarre. I've never seen a situation like it.
it's we talk a lot about mentality in football, and it works both ways. So mentality in the Rangers team, I think, is really fragile and needs to be rebuilt. And I think that's been the case for a number of years now. But the mentality of the other teams, the teams coming to Ibrox, is nowhere near as fearful as it should be. Teams are
Mm.
coming to Ibrox believing they can get a result. They don't have that when they go to Parkhead. And I believe that teams, so take teams in the Premiership, that they want to get a result against the old firm. They don't really care which side of the old firm it is. We're the beatable side at the minute. So they've got that belief, they've got that mentality, and they've got a goal to go and do it. So the mentality on both sides, our fragile state and their kind of emboldened and confident state, it's a difficult combination for us.
No, 100%, absolutely agree, Ross. And obviously, just touching on the game, right? Obviously, Rangers won 4-2. Going into the game, I was wanting Rangers to make a proper statement, right? We're up against League One Alloa. You want to go out there, put on a show. We've heard a lot in terms of how good Russell Martin's style of play can be. We've seen, I
Yep.
think, in my opinion, we've seen glimpses of that. We also been touched on the game against Victoria, where I thought, especially in the first leg, where Rangers played a lot, Rangers played a lot of nice, tidy stuff. But yesterday did not fill me with any confidence whatsoever. We just get straight to the point. Of course, we'll touch on the good goals that Rangers scored. Um, the first goal that Rangers conceded was one of the worst goals I've seen Rangers concede probably in my lifetime. Like, we see when it happened, Ross, I just bust out laughing because at this moment in time, it's like if you don't laugh, if you don't laugh, you'll greet at this point. But it was so expected, and it was so schoolboy error stuff. It was embarrassing. So was.
It was embarrassing. It was pathetic, quite frankly. And it was pathetic from the moment that Bailey Rice got breezed past and decided to sort of stand still and then have a little half-arse jog back, through to the moment that Max Aarons clattered it off his own player's face and into the goal. Like it's embarrassing, but you knew it was coming. You knew it would happen. You knew that we would concede. And I think what frustrated me yesterday is actually things I wanted to see here yesterday. I wanted to see us make changes to personnel and bring in peripheral players. So your Manny Fernandez. I wanted to see Bayrami get a run out. One or two others. So I was pleased to see him make 10 changes. I wanted to see us score goals. I wanted 3 plus, really. So I got that. It's the defensive side, which was it was a real letdown, a real letdown. And there were more than one occasion. There was more than one occasion in which we could have conceded comedy goals like that, and that's the worry is, and it's similar to last season under Clement. I felt that we so regularly would have 20, 25, 30 shots or attempts or chances. The opposition would have two and would score one, and we wouldn't. And that was his downfall, in my opinion. We're still there. We're still there, but we're still there having, who started in that back line yesterday? It was Max Aarons, new, Nasser
Yeah.
Giga, new, Manny Fernandez, new, and Bailey Rice. I mean, not new, but he wasn't exactly playing last year, and he certainly wasn't playing as a fullback. So it's effectively a whole new back line, and we're still defensively doing the same stupid things, and that's a worry. I don't understand. New coaching staff, new players. new tactics, new system. How can that still be the case?
Yeah, no, 100%. Because like, see, over the last week or so, I've been very positive about Russell Martin. Like, because obviously when he was appointed, I was like, what are we doing here? But then I gave it much more thought and research. I'm like, you know what, he deserves a chance. Speaks well. I think I'm going with the mindset of like he's learned from his mistakes from Southampton. But obviously, when I've spoken to a lot of Southampton fans, Swansea fans, they're all saying the same thing, where he's very stubborn in his ways, and obviously, I do know how when the other week when he touched on after the Alloa game, he talked about egos, players need to drop their egos. I'm not saying the guy's got an ego, but the way he's coming across so far, it's almost like his way or no way. And when it comes to like talking about egos, I'm actually starting to think this guy might actually have a bit of an ego. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, what I will say in his defence is that um, Southampton was it was like stubborn to the point that he lost his job over it, didn't he? And I think he was. I'll butcher this as I try and kind of. I won't quote him directly, but he was along the lines of saying that I would rather lose playing my way than get a result compromising my philosophy and my beliefs. You can't have that. You cannot have that. Certainly not at Rangers. When he started, I am sure was it Panathinaikos or one or two or three of the early games he did change the system a wee bit where we went, I can remember us going to a back three, for example. And I went, okay, maybe actually he has learned from Southampton and maybe actually all the reports that he was stubborn and this and that are a little bit wide of the mark. The problem is right now, I don't necessarily, I think as you say, you're seeing glimpses of what he's trying to do. You saw glimpses of it in the preseason training videos, which is obviously manicured to make it look how they wanted it to look. You saw glimpses of it, arguably second half against Panathinaikos at Ibrox. And you saw definitely more than glimpses of it against Pilsen, who were a weak team, in my opinion, when they came to Glasgow. I don't think they were a great side. So what I will say about Martin, I think we always knew that this would take time. I've got a good friend of mine who's a season ticket holder at Southampton, and he was like, actually, I'm one of the few guys that wanted Martin to stay because I think they would have got there. And I think we need to, if this is the route we're going to, I was a bit like you, this was not the guy I would have thought would be ended up as the Rangers manager. But if we're going down this route, if this is what we're doing, it'll take 6 months for these players to understand and buy into it and get there. You don't get 6 months with us. You might not get 6 weeks if it doesn't take hold quickly. So it's I don't know. I don't know if he has an ego. I don't know I don't understand how managers can be that wedded to a philosophy when the only philosophy at Rangers is to win.
Mm-hmm. And just touch on the game as well, right? See, and even on the signings too, the signings that Martin's made, they do excite me. I think Rothwell obviously didn't have a great showing yesterday. Of course, got an assist and whatnot, but didn't cover himself in glory for Alva's goal for the first one. Rothwell looks like a player. I'm very excited about what Asgard can do in particular. Gassama, I think we all know he's set to be, not trying to be hyperbolic here, but I think he could be a superstar at Rangers. He's got all the fundamentals to do that. But obviously, Mikey Moore made his debut yesterday. I know it was against Alloa with the greatest respect, but I thought he had a good showing. He's young. I think he's got a bit about him, and I like that. But one thing I just want to ask you, Ross, in particular, right? I will touch on obviously the left back signing as well. Obviously, Mikey Moore's young. He's highly thought of down south, especially by Spurs fans. Spoke to a lot of Spurs fans. They've said like you're on a watch for him. If he plays a lot of games, he'll thrive in the Scottish League. But in terms of Mikey Moore, do you see him being a big part of this Rangers team going forward this season?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because I actually think, as you mentioned, Gassama is clearly a really, really good player. I'm also really excited by Antman as well. I thought Antman against Pilsen was the best Rangers debut I've ever seen, actually. If those two are our first choice wingers, it's hard to see where Mikey Moore slots in, unless, maybe I'm being overly simplistic about this, but I suppose you could draw a line to say that Russell Martin is kind of a student or a devotee of the Pep Guardiola style of football. I always feel that Pep Guardiola would love to play with a team of midfielders. He doesn't really necessarily want an out and out striker. Obviously, Haaland came along and you don't say no to that. But the couple of seasons before that, he didn't overly utilise like Aguero or Gabby Jesus or whoever. So perhaps it's a case of having Antman and Gassama and then Mikey Moore floating a bit. And I think a young player floating around like that, confidence, definitely has ability, and maybe is a wee bit, full of the arrogance of youth. Maybe that'll be a good thing, because what I will say about Mikey Moore from yesterday, he has variety to his game. He will take players on, or he'll cut back. He'll look for the pass. He'll drive to the byline. He'll cut into the box. He was all over the pitch. So I think it's a really exciting signing. I agree with you that Spurs fans that I know from down here are saying this guy is a serious talent, which is why, I know there's always a debate to be had about getting players on loan and not developing your own players. But if it's a case of like getting a player like Mikey Moore or developing one of our own who isn't at the same level, we're at the point we need results today. We don't need to be developing if we can get someone else in who's better.
And one thing I thought was really interesting what you said, I think it might have been yesterday or like the day before the Rangers Alloa game, where he said that he has ambitions to be one of the best players in the world. And I like that. Because he knows himself, right? This is why this gives me so much hope, where we know like it'll be a one and done with him this season, right? After this season, he's going back down south. But the reason that gave me so much more optimism surrounding the signing is because he knows himself. If he doesn't hit the ground running, if he doesn't do well at Rangers, see with his ambitions going forward, trying to be one of the best players in the world, that's going to hinder that quite a bit. So I want players to come into Rangers and have that arrogance where obviously Nico Raskin, which we will obviously touch on as the pod goes on, where he did say, like he said, I think it was a couple of years ago, he sees Rangers as a stepping stone because he wants to go down south, he wants to play for Chelsea, that's his dream. That's fine with me, as long as you do it up here. And may as well just like obviously stay in the subject of Nico Raskin right now. Nico Raskin, obviously, so far, he's last 6 months or so under Barry, he was absolutely phenomenal. He was arguably Rangers' best player. Since Martin's came in my opinion, I think he's been kind of going through the motions a little bit. He's been kind of checked out, and I feel as though what Martin said a couple of weeks ago when he was talking about players dropping their egos, I felt as though that was aimed at Nico Raskin. And obviously, he's not signing a new deal, Ross. But in terms of the situation with Nico Raskin, he won't be happy being dropped by Russell Martin. He won't be happy being on the bench. I think he's been dropped 3 times or so far under Martin. He was just in the Belgian national team, so he's going to be saying to his agent here, what's happening here? What are we doing here? Like, I'm not going to be benched here when my stock is this high and I've only got so much time left. So. What do you actually see happening, Nico Raskin, right? Because I've always said this and I've always maintained this. If Raskin doesn't sign a new deal, in my opinion, Rangers need to just cash in on him. Even though it's a slow one because he is Rangers' best midfielder. But I feel like Rangers have neglected the whole player train model for so long where just strike when the iron's hot. But what would you do with this situation with Nico Raskin? If he doesn't want to sign a new deal this summer, would you look to cash in on him?
Absolutely, I would, and he had a very good 6 months. He was our best player last season, in my opinion. However, I think the period leading up to that last 6 months, he was poor, and there were questions around things like his professionalism. There were questions certainly around his diet. That was quite well publicised at the time that they got a dietitian working with the guy. That to me doesn't strike me as an elite level professional, if that's the situation. So again, going back to Russell Martin and his system, his philosophy, that is only going to work if you've got players 100% committed to it. If Nico Raskin is not willing or able to grasp that, put the effort in, and I might be doing the guy a huge disservice, but if he doesn't fancy that, he needs to go. He needs to go. He is also now, and I'll put Diomande in this position as well, a player who was very good for us last season, was one of our better players. They're up against competition, good competition. So Joe Rothwell and Tello Asgard, highly rated players, seen as good captures for Rangers, brought in by this manager, or at least this management team, because I know it's not necessarily the manager signing the players. But the manager will clearly like those guys and wants those guys. So if they're already fighting an uphill battle, if they've not got the stomach for it, or they don't want to buy into the system, Lyle Cameron as well. Lyle Cameron is a really good example that I felt he came in the other day and he took his chance. He really, really impressed. Nico Raskin is in an uncomfortable position. if it was me, if I was the manager, if I was the director of football, whatever, I'd be having a very honest conversation with him. So your stock is high, but you need to buy into what we're doing here. If you're not willing to buy in, then you're going to compromise your position in the Belgian squad. You don't want that. If we need to move you on, we need to move you on. And you're right. Player trading, strike while the iron is hot. This is one of the sellable assets that we have that can get into double digit millions. I'd have thought. Good age, good stock, good pedigree, international player. Ticks a lot of boxes to move him on.
100%. And obviously, just touch on the player trading model, right? The left back situation, I think it's been an issue at Rangers for quite a while or so. Jeffy looks set to go back to Brazil for £6 million. Great bit of business that is. Pardon me, Yilmaz. For me, I think it's been a total flop. In my opinion, I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but you can't afford to have a player that's always going to be obviously injured all the time. Just can't be doing that. But obviously tonight, the big news: Rangers signed a left back from Brentford called Jaden Magahama on loan until the end of the season. 19 years old. He's only played 13 professional games. One obviously 13 for Preston and one for Brentford actually. Could he be the answer, do you think? Because obviously, just going back to what I was saying earlier on, Rangers have been signing a lot of young players, teenagers. It's players with potential, not players coming in with like for example, Joe Rothwell. We know what we're going to get with Joe Rothwell. You know he's going to be a great player because he's a proven player. He's done well down south, but obviously Mikey Moore, potential. Obviously Jaden, potential. But could this be the answer for us, right? Because we don't know a great deal about him because the news just came out tonight. Would you think Russell Martin will be putting all his money on Jaden being the main guy at left back for this season, or do you think he might go and try and get another one in?
It's a really difficult one because as a fan, I want to see him go and get another one in. I don't want us to be relying solely on a 19-year-old who's played 14 games in his career. And what I don't understand, this kid is clearly, supremely talented and has a bright future. And actually, okay, let's not be harsh to him. Preston, good championship squad, good team, good level, and he got good game time there. So he certainly can handle himself and will be good enough for the Scottish Premiership. What I don't understand is the scouting behind it, because again, we're now this kind of one club philosophy where we've got the way that we want to play, and that's from the director of football and the manager and the scouts, and it all ties in together. So presumably the scouting team have gone out and done a really, really thorough research job into this guy to say, actually, yes, he's got the characteristics, he's got the ability, he's got the mindset, he's got the attitude, he can play the way we want to play. Mm. I don't understand how you can come to that decision after 14 games. That to me doesn't seem like enough data. However, I'm not a scout and I never will be. I think it's risky because, as you say, Jeffy going away for £6 million is phenomenal business. I mean, extraordinary business. I simply never took to the guy. Ridvan, as you say, we're getting our kind of annual Ridvan to Besiktas rumour. Let's see if it happens at this point. There must be something in it. I wonder if it's wages holding it up, perhaps. That being said, we'll probably lose both of them. Mm-hmm. Where does that leave us? That leaves us with this young lad, Magoma. And then what? Max Aaron's covering at left back and put Tav back in at right back. If Jaden is unavailable, I don't know that that's robust enough. So I would hope to see another. I still think, this is our 10th summer signing. I didn't think we'd actually do 10. I felt we needed more than 10, but I didn't think we would do 10 in one window. But it's our 10th signing. I don't know that there's going to be many more. How many weeks have we got there? What's the date today? It's the 17th, so we've got 2 weeks left of the transfer window. I'd like to see a couple more. I'd like one of them to be a left back. I'd like one of them to be a striker. I still think we could do with another centre half as well. So that's my wish list. But as you say, we are signing young. We're signing really young. Mikey Moore, clearly talented. The jury will be out on this young lad for a little while. Wouldn't mind us getting a few more leaders in, a few more Joe Rothwells. There was obviously the big link, was it to Luke de Jong, striker earlier in the window. That hasn't happened. He's gone elsewhere. But someone in that mould, a leader with experience positive, positive influence in the dressing room, because we've lost a bit of that. To be fair, we lost Connor Goldson, we've lost Leon Balogun, we have lost one or two leadership figures, and I think we could do with replacing that.
And also in terms of outgoings, Ross, we've not seen a great deal of that, which is concerning, shall we say. But in terms of players that need to go, I know it's difficult because obviously these players are on big wages and they don't want to go elsewhere to obviously have to obviously be earning less money. But being realistic, right? What players do you think Rangers can get out the door in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I think it's a good question. And I texted my friend David the other day this list of people that I would like to see go, because I know, right. This is going to sound really, really harsh because he's a kid and he's homegrown, and he won't go because of the homegrown quota thing. Bailey Rice's performance yesterday was shambolic. It was one of the worst performances I have seen. I know he's not a left back. I know he's young and he's still learning. He should be good enough to stop a Scottish League One defender, a Scottish League One winger, I should say. He should be good enough to do that, and he wasn't. And he didn't look interested. I would like to see him gone, simply on the basis of yesterday's performance. Kieran Dowell. Kieran Dowell is an interesting one, to the point that I think Kieran Dowell is obviously playing a lot, and we don't necessarily see the reason for that because he's not really contributing much on the pitch. So it's one of two things, and it's possibly both. It's possibly that he's an extraordinary trainer, and you must look really good in training. You must give his all and have a really good attitude. But he also perhaps is being put in the shop window. He did okay for Birmingham last year, so maybe we need to get this guy some game time to try and entice someone to come and make a bid. But I would like to see him go. Jeffrey and Ridvan we've spoken about. The other one is Danilo. Danilo will be tough because I think he is on big wages. I think it'll be tough to find someone to take him, given that he's not had a lot of game time. And this season he's looked really poor. He had a full pre-season. Cyril and Hamza were obviously unavailable at the start of the season, so he had a phenomenal opportunity to nail down his spot for the start of the season, and he's not taken it, which is a shame because by all accounts he's a really likable guy. But I don't see him going, and we don't know the situation with Hamza. We don't know the situation if he's staying or going. Cyril, it seems he's picked up a bit of a knock, and reports he obviously went off injured when was it, midweek or last week. Reports are suggesting it's not as bad as it first seemed, but any knee injury, I think fans will get naturally nervous. So it might be a risk to get rid of Danilo at the moment, but if we could get him off the wage bill and use that money to recruit a bit more sensibly up front, I think that's necessary.
Yeah, and one thing that's always like kind of frustrating me about Danilo, right? Because I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but he's just another one where they're brought in for big money, and he's another one just been so injury prone. You've barely been able to see what he's actually capable of, which is so frustrating. And obviously, there's one as well that I still cannot believe it's on that I still can't believe he's on the wage bill to this day. Is Matondo, like, because I don't think he's back until late August, I'm sure. Yeah. And when he does come back, he'll probably get injured within like 2 games or so. And you're like, this guy's only had one good moment, if we're being realistic about it. One good moment in a Rangers jersey, and that was against Celtic in the free each game. That meant nothing, obviously, in the long term. But there's just so much dead wood at the club, Ross. And it's so frustrating where it's like the mismanagement has been there for so long.
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because you're right. It's that the squad is bloated. They've recruited too many players. They've put these players on long-term, high-value contracts. But that's evidence that actually every manager that we've had, going back to Van Bronckhorst, followed by Beale, followed by Clement, they've all actually been backed. They've all had, because these players have been brought in on, as we say, some of the reasons we can't get rid of them is because some of them are on really good money. It's clear that the club went out and spent in order to get these players in. It's just that, I don't know whether it's the scouting wasn't good enough, the recruitment wasn't good enough, the money was there and the money was spent, and actually now we're paying for it because we can't get these guys out the door. And then what happens is that you have that situation where we end up losing but your bigger assets like your Morelos, like your Kent, you end up losing them for nothing because no one will take them on. They don't want to sign a new contract and they walk away.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on obviously Russell Martin's style of play, right? Obviously that's certainly had a lot of backlash, shall we say. But try to be optimistic here, Ross, right? Do you think it can come good? Because see, watching Rangers so far this season, it's like heart in the mouth stuff where it's not enjoyable. The only game that I enjoyed
Yeah.
watching was obviously against Victoria, where we won 3-0. That was the only one. The rest have it's just been brutal. It really has. It really has been brutal. Where obviously when Rangers conceded that first goal yesterday against Alloa, I'm just numb to it now, and I just bust out laughing. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is what we expect nowadays, you know.
Yeah.
But obviously his style of play. I'm not going to say his name, but I spoke to a manager, right, who has a very similar philosophy to, well, not entirely similar, but kind of similar to Russell Martin. And he told me that he's never going to change his ways. This is his
Mhm.
football, that's it. And I've obviously said that after I watched Russell Martin on Monday Night Football. I don't know if you've seen the clip a few months ago. He was on with Jamie Carragher, and Carragher asked him, when you look back at the time at Southampton, what would you have done differently? And he was like, I would have liked to have focused more on the dark arts, like tweak things a little bit more here and there. And from what I've seen so far, I don't see any difference in the style of play compared to
No.
a Southampton team to now. And obviously, as we've spoken about, the Southampton fans have said to me, yeah, good luck, Scott. Like, it's going to be a long season if he's not going to change it, and this is the football you're going to get. Where, like, this is one thing that really does concern me, Ross, right? Because there's for me, I'm like probably one of the most positive Rangers fans going, right. I try to be upbeat, positive, get behind the manager, right, and I'm fully on board with the Martin train. But right now it is difficult. If he loses to Celtic, right, or just say Rangers got the Champions League, lose to Club Brugge, right, then lose to Celtic, you know yourself. Right after that, it will be toxic, like toxic. I think probably worse than when Michael Beale went out the Champions League and lost to Celtic. I think this will be 10 times worse because like that's thing when Michael Beale was appointed, it was that's who the fans wanted. I
Yeah.
personally didn't want him, but the fans wanted him. So the board listened to the fans, didn't work out. But in terms of Russell Martin, let's be totally honest, the majority did not want Russell Martin. Everyone wanted Davide Angelotti, Steven Gerrard, even Kevin Muscat, whoever. No one was really going out there saying they wanted Russell Martin. But in your opinion, right, if Rangers go out the Champions League, then lose to Celtic, and if Russell Martin doesn't respond well after that, do you think there is a possibility that he could be gone by the end of September or start of October if he doesn't respond well, like to those losses?
It's it's a funny one because I guess with new ownership and new people running the club, you wouldn't be surprised if he was got if these Americans have come in, they're supposedly ruthless, they're supposedly very success oriented and success driven. So you wouldn't be surprised if, as you say, we get knocked out against Club Brugge, say we draw against St Mirren and we lose to Celtic. In a way, we don't know what we're dealing with, and it wouldn't be a huge shock if they just went, wrong decision, go again. But you also wouldn't be surprised if they were to be stubborn and set in their ways, because there's this other side of them that maybe they're not going to listen to what the fans have to say. They're not that interested in how toxic it turns. This is the decision we've taken. We've got all of our data, all of our analysis and research that backs that decision up, and we're going to give him time. I wouldn't be surprised. It literally could be either one of those. And I am so bad, clearly, at picking managers because I wanted Gio, I didn't want Beale, but I really wanted Clement. I didn't want Martin particularly. I could see. I was kind of on ambivalent, let's say. None of them have worked. None of them have worked. So for me, actually, I would be, if I were the Americans and if I were in charge, I would be inclined to just give him time because I don't think it's the manager. I actually don't. I think it's the players. I think it, and even if it's not the players, I think it's the culture of the club at the moment that's driving some kind of second best inferiority. I just feel that there's something rotten that is spanning across different groups of players, that is spanning across different managers. It feels that we as a club have just been losers for 4 years now. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. I really wouldn't be surprised if they decide ruthless, not working, bad decision, change. I wouldn't be surprised if they said that's our decision, we're sticking to it, and to hell with what the fans have to say. They're not the ones making the decisions. It's going to be an interesting ride either way. Look, I think trying to be a bit more positive. As I say, yesterday's game, they made 10 changes and we scored 4 goals. we going into a home cup tie against a lower league opposition, we always talk beforehand, going, I want to score four or five. I want, we could put 7 past them. It never actually happens. Like, when was the last time we actually did that? So he made 10 changes and we scored 4 goals. It's just the defensive side that's not working. And that's the bit I can't get my head around. Whether you need to, and maybe if you try and rationalise it, you go, it was a really crap piece of defending, particularly from Bailey Rice for the first goal, and it was some really crap marking from Kieran Dowell, who we already know is crap, for the second goal, which was a set piece, which was stupidly given away by a player, Max Aarons, who also has not really impressed so far, in my opinion. So maybe you can try and rationalise it and go, actually, yesterday, it was okay, right? Maybe it was okay. I'm nervous about what's coming next. Actually, it's funnily enough, go back to what you said right at the start. Teams come to Ibrox and fear us because of our record in European teams. I mean, they come to Ibrox and they fear us because of our record in Europe. I'm flying up Tuesday morning for the game on Tuesday night. I actually think we'll win. I really do. And our first choice 11, you play Gassama, you play Cyril up front, you play Antman. Our first choice 11 is good enough to beat Bruges. It really is. It's actually not the worst draw we could have had. You just don't really know what we're going. I was in Greece for the Panathinaikos second leg, and it was the most uncomfortable I've been at a football game. Not just because of the heat, but because of, particularly in that first. I thought the second half was relatively well managed. That first half, it was just so uncomfortable to watch.
Oh yeah,
and then So we're kind of all over the place. I feel my answer there has been all over the place because we just don't know what we're going to get. We don't know what we're going to get on the park. We don't know what players are really up for it. I've got the fight for it. I've got the stomach for it. We don't know what the owners are going to do. We don't know if we're going to spend any more money. It's really difficult.
No, 100%. And see, obviously, I mean, just touch on the Dundee game. That just felt like watching a Michael Beale Fleet Clermont Rangers side where it was you're just numb to it all. And obviously, just touch on as well where you just don't know what Rangers team you're going to get. Where last season as well, perfect example, Barry Ferguson's first home game, first league game in charge. Ibrox. Rangers lose 2-1 to Motherwell. Days later, rock up in Turkey, beat one of the best managers of all time in Jose Mourinho. Should have been 4 or 5-1, finished 3-1. And you're just like, this Rangers team, they're so bipolar. And it's almost like we're seeing similar traits to that this season so far, where obviously domestically it's not been good. Obviously Rangers, the first 2 league games, Rangers should have lost. Obviously in Europe it's going well. Rangers are 2 games away from making the Champions League, but trying to be positive as well. The signings, as I was saying earlier on, I'm optimistic about them. Finlay Curtis, I think there's a real player in there. I'm glad to see Russell Martin's giving him a chance. 18 years old, he seems very bold and confident, and that's great. And I hope he gets a lot more opportunities as the season goes on, because he's not put a foot wrong so far. So that's good, because I do remember Clermont. That was one of his big things when he came in. He was talking about bringing through the youth, through the academy, giving young players a chance. The only young player that he actually gave a proper chance to was Ross McCausland. And let's be honest, he's not very good. Hence why he's out on loan in Cyprus. But yeah, obviously, right now I'm trying to be as optimistic as possible. But some of the stuff Russell Martin's been saying in his pressers, it was so Jekyll and Hyde in my opinion, where obviously after the Motherwell game he was throwing the players under the bus. Then a week later he was talking about, I'm really glad we didn't lose to Dundee. But just touching on this as well, see what he said after the Motherwell game. Do you think that was wise of him doing that? Because obviously I've seen mixed reviews about it, but what's your thoughts?
He was definitely critical of the attitude of a few players, wasn't he? And as you say, I think we could probably pick out who he was talking about in particular. I don't mind that, if I'm honest. I really don't mind that. And I think the reason I don't mind that is because I do believe that the players have to carry a huge amount of responsibility. Regardless of system, regardless of tactics, those players, they earn enough, they're experienced enough, and they're good enough that they should be able to go out and beat Motherwell. So actually, I don't mind it. And if some of them do need to lose an ego, again, I think the whole style of play that Martin wants is it's very team focused. It's lots of passes. It's getting everyone involved. If you're not able to buy into that, you're not willing to buy into that, and you've got too big of an ego, you're not going to work. So I don't mind it, actually. And I felt that am I right in saying we went from the Motherwell game into Pilsen at home, didn't we?
Yep.
Which was a very, very good performance, and
I got reaction. Yeah.
it got a reaction. Um, but then as you say, he comes out and he says, "Oh, we've done so much learning, and they've looked like beasts in training, and this and that." So it's even in his own comments, he's a bit Jekyll and Hyde. But no, like I say, I don't mind it because I think the players have let us down, and that's why I believe that actually, possibly, maybe I'm talking myself into this, but possibly sticking with the manager and giving him more time is the right thing to do because this group of players have shown that they do not mind disappointing manager after manager after manager.
But one thing I want to touch on as well that you mentioned earlier on, obviously when you're talking about Max Aarons, right? Max Aarons, obviously Russell Martin's first summer signing. He's not exactly had a great start. To be fair to him though, he's been put in like some very uncomfortable situations playing at left back. My opinion, he's not a natural left back. He's not played a lot of football in 2025. I think overall he's played about like 16 games or so, just off the top of my head. Um, but in terms of going forward though with the right back situation, Tavernier's been dropped 3 games, right? Like the Alloa game, you can understand why he was dropped because no, with great respect, it was against Alloa, right? But he was obviously dropped for some two big games, obviously against Victoria last week and against Dundee. The Dundee game, obviously that was a decision that backfired. He obviously dropped Raskin for that as well. And then as soon as he brought Tavernier and Raskin on, the game totally changed. But going forward right now, we all know James Tavernier. He divides opinion. In my opinion, obviously you know my thoughts on Tavernier. I'm a huge fan of his. Obviously, I won't go into it in this podcast because we're here till about 1 o'clock in the morning. But in terms of right back going forward just now, who would you go for? Because Tavernier's coming at his final year, but for me, he's still the best right back in the country. And obviously, Tavernier's had a proper pre-season behind him this time round, and I
Yeah,
feel he's getting back to his best. Obviously, he scored 3 goals so far. He's bailed Rangers out, obviously twice in the league. If it wasn't for Tav, Rangers would have lost both games. But Aarons, I'm not writing him off by any means. But for me, I'm not saying Tav should be starting 50, 60 games a season because he's going to be 54 obviously in October. But you need to go with your best players. You need to go with your most experienced players. When you're coming up against Club Brugge and coming up against Celtic, you need to start James Tavernier. You can't be starting Max Aarons because for me, I think Max Aarons looks like a deer in headlights so far.
yeah.
I think he's got potential. He's a capable player, but he definitely is. But when it comes to these kind of games, you need to go with your tried and tested. And for me, James Tavernier has to be the guy going forward, in my opinion. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one actually, and I thought it would be really clear. I thought Max Aarons would come in and be the first choice right back, but maybe do sort of, let's say, 25 to 30 games, and Tavernier would supplement 15 to 20. And I thought it would be good. As you say, Tavernier's turned 34 this season, so turning 34 in a couple of months. Um, I felt it was a good idea to get a right back in on loan this season to kind of transition Tav out of the team and he's get permanently replaced next season. I still think that's the plan. I think having nobody available at left back of any competence has necessitated putting Max Aarons there, and he's looked poor actually. To be fair, and I'm really disappointed in that because he's the signing, possibly out with the exciting wingers. Max Aarons was the signing I was the most excited about. Good pedigree, played in the Premier League, played out in La Liga. Thought he'd be really, really good, and I think he's struggled. And I don't know if that's because he's underestimated it, or as you say, if he's rusty, he's not played enough games. He looks better on the right than he does on the left. But I think having nobody suitable to play left back has necessitated moving him there. So I think yesterday starting Bailey Rice was wrong, and I would have had Aaron's left back and Tav right back. I'm like you. I am a big fan of James Tavernier. I think on his day, he's still the best football player at Rangers. Doesn't always show it, but he probably is actually the most talented footballer that we've got sometimes. It's a shame that he's not having the managed or phased transition out of the first team that I thought he would get this season. Now, maybe bringing in this young left back means that Aarons will get a bit more established. Maybe he needs 5, 6, 10 games, whatever it might be, and that's fine. But I suspect we're going to end up using Tavernier a lot more than we thought we would this season. I do think he's going to hit 30 games, quite frankly. And as you say, there have been games already this year where we've looked better when he came on.
Yeah.
And it's not, our fan base is a peculiar one, isn't it? It's not a popular thing to say, but we do. I'm not going to say we look more solid because we still concede stupid goals. And he is vulnerable defensively. We concede a hell of a lot of goals down his side. But creatively, he's still got it. As you say, he's still scoring goals. He popped up with a header against Motherwell in a position that was reminiscent to him under Warburton. So I'm still glad to have him.
No, 100%. Like, I just feel as though I think some of the disrespect that he gets from our fan base is embarrassing, in my opinion. And obviously, I don't know if you're on social media, Ross. I don't blame you if you're not. Obviously, I need to be on social media because of my job. But like the cesspool of abuse on social media
Yeah.
towards James Tavernier is ridiculous. Where I think obviously the quote that Conor Goldson said after the League Cup final in 2023, the game that Tav scored the winner in, was like Rangers, this club won't appreciate James Tavernier until James Tavernier's no longer here, and it's so true. It's so true because what he's done for Rangers over the last 10 years has been incredible, and people do seem to forget the terrible teams he's played in. And I've always said it as well. If you put Barry Ferguson in some of the teams Tav's played in, he probably would have won the same amount as Tav, and like obviously football's not a one man game, and Tavernier, for me, he will go down as a Rangers legend. And hopefully if this is going to be his last season, Ross, hopefully he goes out in a high and he gets that testimonial, and it's because he deserves that, considering everything he's done for the club and all the nonsense that he's had to put up with. Because you never see that really nowadays in football, Ross, where you get a player that stays at a club for that period of time, like 10 years, like especially at the Old Firm as well. It's
Yeah.
very rare.
It's very rare, and for a player that you look at his career before coming to Rangers, he was bouncing from place to place. He was doing like 6 month loans here and there. He'd racked up a good half dozen clubs, and he was only 23 at the time, and he'd really moved around a lot. So for him to kind of move up north, and he's settled and he's started his family, or his family's kind of grown up in Scotland. I do agree that we will miss him when he's gone. I will caveat it by saying he's been the leader of a group of players that have let the club down a number of times, and that's not particularly on him. I don't think we will ever know as fans. I don't think we'll ever know the inner workings of what's gone on. But I have felt repeatedly, actually, that group of players have stopped playing for managers, or have let their managers down and have let the fan base down. And Tavernier has been a constant in that. He's not won enough. As a captain of Rangers, he's not won enough. He'll probably be the first to admit that. All of that being said, we're going to rely on him heavily this season. I'm sure of it.
And then also just to finish off, Ross, obviously Club Brugge this week, we played them in a pre-season friendly. We drew to each of them, but that's a friendly. You can't really judge that at all. But in terms of the start 11, just to also put you in the spot, what would you go with in Tuesday night?
Well, I must admit that Liam Kelly's performance yesterday scared me, because there were a couple of times that he seemed to want to play in midfield. So I think Butland is kind of back to his best, actually, in terms of shot stopping ability. I'd have Butland in. Now, forgive my ignorance. It looks like Jeffty's away. Has he been deregistered from the squad yet, or will he be available?
I don't see him starting. I'll be surprised if he's going to be starting come Tuesday.
In which case,
Jeffty's
I don't think.
Yes, Jeffty's out the squad. Ross, Jeffty's out the squad.
He is. He's out the squad. Okay. Yep. I would be very surprised if the new lad Jaden starts. So I think it'll be Tavernier right, and I think it'll be Max Aaron's left back. I quite liked Manny Fernandez yesterday, but I think the manager will revert to John Souttar and Nasser Giga. Nasser Giga, we haven't spoken about. Looks a tidy player. Looks like he can play this system. Looks decent. Midfield, I think he's going to stick with Rothwell. I think, I could see it. I could see it being Rothwell, Diamande, and Lyle Cameron. I think Lyle Cameron's looks.
Drop Raskin again.
I think he'll drop Raskin again. And then I want to see Gassama and Antman on the flanks. I don't think it'll be. I think it'll be too early for Cyril. Is Hamza Rigaman ready to start a game and give us 60 minutes? I would hope so. I would actually rather see Hamza struggle through 60 minutes than see Danilo on the pitch again. So I would put Hamza up top.
Yeah, because obviously that's the thing as well. I would put obviously Hamza up top, but I'll be surprised if Martin does that. If I'm being honest,
Yeah,
and I think we kind of
me
seen
too.
that last year as well, where it was quite surprising where Barry didn't really fancy Igaman to start a lot of games, which was
Yeah.
interesting. Where obviously Hamza would come on a lot, obviously from the bench. Um, but in terms of the striking situation, just to finish off on this as well, I said this a couple months ago. See if we were to start the season with Dessers, Igaman, and Danilo. I would have been totally fine with that if I'm being honest.
Mhm.
But even though I've been last 6 months, Teslas has won me over, and obviously it's quite unpredictable what's going to happen with his situation right now, considering he might have a bad injury. Um,
Mhm.
and obviously you touched on earlier on about bringing in another striker, but realistically, right? If Dessers was to go, or even Igaman was to go, right, obviously one of them will be off, right? There's no way both of them will be here come first of September. But just to put you on the spot, if you had to bring in one striker right now, realistically, who would it be? Obviously,
That's
Jamie
a
Vardy's not
phenomenal.
happening. That's been
Uh,
long gone. That's not going to happen.
it's a tough question. It would probably actually be someone from Scotland who's currently playing in the Scottish League. I
Mm,
think that we and that does not mean Shankland. I think that ship has long sailed, and
agreed.
I don't think that's right. I don't know. I don't know that I could give you a name. I'm trying to think who Hibs and Aberdeen have got up top at the minute. Um, Obviously you've got the boy at Hibs that scored the wonder goal against Partizan Belgrade
Mm,
midweek there. I don't even know if he's a striker, but I think it would have to be someone from Scotland. I think we need to build up that coefficient base. Also have someone that's not going to come in and underestimate our league, because I still think that happens all the time. I think when
yeah,
you recruit from England, they come up and they underestimate the league. Um, so, uh, but as you say, it's very difficult to tell which of the three is going to go. I think Danilo will probably stay because of the wage situation. Hamza and Dessers, it's very difficult to say which of those will go. I'd actually I'd actually prefer it to be Hamza that leaves for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I'm Cyril's biggest fan, quite frankly. The goals that he scores, the character of the guy, never hides, takes it all in his stride. I think he's probably a phenomenal character to have in the dressing room. Also, with Hamza, you're going to get more money just with the age and the potential and the future of the kids. So I'd actually rather see Igaman out the door and reinvest those funds.
yeah, no, 100%. And obviously, last question, Ross. Prediction for Tuesday. Score prediction.
Honestly, Scott, I see us winning it. I really do see us winning it. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we go and do that 2-0, if we go and do that 3-1, something like that,
Mm.
and go to Bruges and end up having an extremely nervy night. Um, I don't know if you've ever been to Bruges, by the way. It's a phenomenal city. Belgium, great Belgium, right? It's known for chips, waffles, chocolate, and beer, and the football's not bad either. Like, just a fantastic place. So it's actually, given that we got past Panathinaikos with about 20 minutes of preseason training under our belt, since then it's not been the toughest route to the Champions League. If we can't beat Bruges, we don't deserve to be in the Champions League. Simple as that. Obviously, nice to have the safety net of the Europa League. Nice to bank the extra money from getting into this playoff round. I could see us doing it, and I could see us doing it and then dropping points to St Mirren at the weekend, and that's the bit I can't wrap my head around.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Ross, because you just never know what to expect with Rangers. Like, obviously, as I was saying earlier on, see Rangers in Europe, no problem at all going to game with
Yep.
fees. But when we're playing against Alloa, Dundee, that's when the nerves come
Yeah.
in. I know.
I know.
It's
I
just,
know.
yeah, it's a life and times of being a Rangers fan in 2025, Ross. But thank you very much for coming on, mate. I really enjoyed it. And on obviously the next pod will be Friday. Rob and Stuart will be on to obviously dissect the midweek action and obviously preview the St Mirren game, which I'm absolutely dreading because obviously St Mirren just knocked out Hearts at the weekend in the League Cup and they're a good side. So, and our record against St Mirren's not been great. I think the last three games we've failed to beat them in. So, and obviously they beat us at Ibrox 2-0. That cost Clemonte's job. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching the pod. And until next time, take care and we'll see you soon.